Can I ask the Minister for Health and Social Care what arrangements exist for the provision of a contact centre for private law matters before the family court, and if he will make a statement?
On the Minister to reply, Mr Ashford.
Thank you, Mr President. Private law matters in the family court are a matter for the Department of Home Affairs and not the Department of Health and Social Care. This is because the reports to the courts in these proceedings are undertaken by court welfare officers who are employed by the Department of Home Affairs. The service referred to is not the same as the contact service operated by the Department of Health and Social Care for children in care and their families. The Department of Health and Social Care therefore has no arrangements for the provision of a contact centre in private law matters. The Department of Home Affairs has kindly informed me that once it was informed that the Children's Centre was no longer providing a contact centre, it commenced work on developing a service itself to meet those needs.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank the Minister for his response and the information that the Department of Home Affairs is looking to cover that gap. But wouldn't he agree that the supervision or supported contact that is provided would require a level of expertise that is provided by people in his Children and Families Division? So this needs to be a case of joined up government rather than perhaps working in silos and everyone pointing fingers at somebody else being responsible for providing the service.
Reply, sir.
Thank you, Mr President. As explained in the original answer, it's not about pointing fingers and saying it's someone else's responsibility. I explained very clearly, Mr President, the reason it sits with the Department of Home Affairs is because the reports to the courts in these proceedings are undertaken by court welfare officers and they are employed directly by the Department of Health and Social Care. I can confirm that the Department of Health and by the Department of Home Affairs, the Department of Health and Social Care has never run this service and there will not be any arrangements being made for this. It is the responsibility of the Department of Home Affairs and quite rightly so, and so they will be continuing as planned with the new arrangements.
Honourable Member for Ramsey, Mr Hooper.
Thank you, Mr President. I'm sure the Minister is aware that this service was previously provided as an ancillary benefit as part of the contract that the Department had with the Isle of Man Children's Centre. So when that contract was tendered and reassigned, what consideration was given to the potential impact on this service that, whilst not being tendered for by the Department, was heavily linked and supported by the charity because of the contract that they had? What impact was assessed of the possibility this service might stop when the contract was tendered out? And is this a case of his department being focused too much on the bottom line and losing sight really of the wider impact that these things have on people?
Ashford.
Thank you, Mr President. It's certainly not a case of being too focused on the bottom line. As I've tried to explain in relation to the question for the family, private law matters and before the family court, it has never been provided by the Department of Health and Social Care. It has always been provided by the Department of Home Affairs. In relation to the services that the Children's Centre commissioned for DHSC, those services were not recommissioned in the large retendering exercise that took place in 2014. I've got to say, Mr President, I'll start again. There is a belief, and I've got to say it's a wrong belief, that this provision has historically been commissioned by DHSC and was not recommissioned when there was the large retendering exercise in 2014. This isn't actually the case. The Isle of Man Children's Centre did operate the contract service for children in care under contract up until 2014, but this was then awarded to another provider, and it has had no impact whatsoever on the family court provision, which the charity continued to provide until very, very recently. That is within the remit of the Department of Home Affairs, and the Department of Home Affairs has kindly provided me with information that they will be looking now to bring a new service forward.